Welcome to the Gen X Experience, the podcast that celebrates the unique journey of 80s kids navigating midlife. I'm your host, Blythe Alperin. Each episode, my guests and I will share with you the unique differences that define our generation and how we are navigating those differences in the real world. Join me for laughs, insights, and a sense of community. Let's embrace the Gen X Experience together. Welcome back to the Gen X Experience. It is episode 49, and today we are having our full-length book club discussion, our winter book club, which is Rocket Man by Brett Langley. I have Brett on the show to talk more about his book. We're going to go a little more in depth than we did in our bonus episode because I just wanted to give you a teaser last time and get you engaged to read. I hope you will enjoy this conversation. I really enjoyed talking to Brett and hearing more about his writing process and how he came up with such in-depth stories. I'm hearing him talk about his dad and his relationship with his dad, and then just, growing up Gen X and the things that we experienced, because this book really, like the detail, and when you read it, you're like, oh God, I remember that. I remember that people were into like BMX. I remember this song. I remember, and just remember when it was like to grow up Gen X and to go to college and to be a young person in your 20s, starting your job and figuring out your career and, the dot-com bubble bursting. So without further ado, my fellow Gen Xers, let's get into our conversation with Brett Langley, author of Rocket Man. Thank you for joining me again, Brett, to talk about your book, Rocket Man, which I'm holding up right here for those of you who are watching. Before we get into the discussion, in case people haven't heard of the first episode, which you should go back and listen to, can you give a little kind of synopsis or overview of what the book is about? And if you want to talk about what inspired you, we're going to get into that, but if you want to talk about that as well, the mic is yours.
Well, thanks so much. Thanks again for having me. I really appreciate it. Loved our discussion we had. So as you mentioned, yes, I'd love people to go back and listen to that again. But so I'm the author of Rocket Man. It is a true crime GenX memoir. It's a reflective book piece. It's a book that I wrote about the years growing up and those that I had with my dad before I lost him to a home invasion robbery at his house in the suburbs of Detroit. The book starts with the crime in the beginning, and then the book is mainly a reflective piece on everything my life and the years I had with my dad leading up to the crime. So it's a little bit of out of order. But I wrote the book just as a reflective, creative piece to pay tribute to my father and share some stories and experiences that I had growing up that I loved. Gen X. That was pretty much the purpose behind it.
Did you find when you wrote this, that it was cathartic? Like, did it give you any peace? I know at the ending you do like an alternate ending, which I love because having lost my parents, I'm like, you go through that. What if this? What if that? And did it help at all with the loss, or did it bring any peace? Because you really didn't get closure on his murder. So
it did bring me a lot of peace because, just getting very deep into the stories and the memories that I had with my dad, it was really a great way for me to kind of go back in time and relive those and be a part of them. Like you mentioned, there's nothing you can do to bring somebody back when they're gone. Once they're gone, but I don't know, in my mind, it was like, a way to keep his memory alive. It was a way to just, like I said, really revisit all those periods that I loved so much. So yeah, it did help. It did help a lot. And it was something that, I didn't write the book, and I wrote the book many years after the crime. So the crime happened in 2008. I started the book, I think maybe 5 to 7 years after the crime. I didn't get too far with it. I kind of put it on the back burner, and I thought about it so much. I just it's one of those things that I just really wanted to complete as as something in my life. So when it came back around, like in 2022, 2023, when I really, really put all my effort into it, it just felt good to complete something that I sought out to do. Like I said, there was a lot of great stuff. And, like the stuff like that was really helpful is that, the early days, like in the late 70s and early 80s, I would go back and talk with my family members and get some of those details when I was really young. And so I didn't remember a lot of it. So it was kind of fun to interview my own family and get some of that background and some of the stories that I really didn't even know about because I was so young.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that because I noticed, like, it was so detailed and, like, you really felt whatever you were doing, whether you're going to college or road tripping or, moving to California or when your parents split up and you moved to Atlanta, like, it's so detailed that you feel like you're right there with you, and I was so impressed because 'cause I'm like, "How does he remember?" And I know when you start thinking about things or talking to people, like, things will come back, but I feel like there's still it's hard to remember. Yeah, like you said, when you're little, and for me, I feel like sometimes the '90s are a little blurry because I was, like, a teenager, then, college, and then 20s, and I'm like, I don't know what year was what, but did you find when you started writing, and then in addition to the interviews, that things just started to, like, really come back into your mind?
It did, but like I said earlier, I thought about this book so much over the years that there was, a lot of the chapters I had thought about them so much that I was really able to develop on how I wrote. Like one part of me almost happy that I didn't complete the book when I originally started it, like 5 to 7 years after the crime, because I feel like with all of those years that I had to really think about it and really pick the pieces that I thought that I wanted to elaborate on, I was able to develop it better. And I feel like I did a better job of writing the book, the longer I waited, because I really got to weigh everything out and which pieces I wanted to include or not include. So, some of those things, like once I've thought about it so much, they were kind of locked in my memory. But some of the really early stuff, I really had to go and because I wanted to do a good job and really nail the time frames, and I really wanted it to be authentic. Where this really happened as pretty close as I could get it to that year, that period. So I really wanted to do a good job and kind of capture the true timeline of it.
I think you did a great job because, as a Gen Xer, I mean, anybody could read this. If you like memoirs, if you like true crime, you're curious about Gen X, but especially as a Gen Xer, I was like, oh yeah, I remember that stuff. Oh yeah, I remember that stuff. And like, just, I'm like, oh yeah, BMX and, skateboarding and just like, cause sometimes if you didn't do things like, not that girls didn't do BMX or, skateboarding, but that was definitely more a guy thing. Like you forget those things. And when you read them from other people, you're like, I remember that. And then it starts bringing up memories from, your childhood. And so, yeah, it was really cool to just kind of take a walk down memory lane.
Well, like I mentioned, I really wanted to capture those different periods. And then after it was done, and like when you and I were talking about it a little while ago, it does seem like Gen X has definitely got a lot of draw these days, that people are very attracted to it. They want to talk about it. It seems like it's having its moment again, like with the clothes we talked about, and just
Mhm.
it seems like a lot of people are talking about Gen X lately. And so that's when I was like, oh, my book is captures that a lot of that stuff perfectly, because I did want to highlight all those stuff that stood out. I wanted it to be like when people read it, they were like, this is probably like right around 1982 or something like that. Um, yeah, it's all that's I meant like roller skating. I don't know if you were in the roller skating,
Yes.
you girl stuff. I mean, I feel like that was like a guy and a girl thing, like going to the roller rink, hanging out amongst girls and skating. I mean, that was all stuff that was super fun when we were really young.
Yeah, I grew up in a very small town, but we did have a rink at one point, and my mom taught me how to skate, and I just loved it. I mean, I remember, yeah, you go with your friends and they play music. I remember getting into a little bit of a fight with an older boy because he like ran into me. I was so annoyed that I just started yelling at him, and my mom was there. She's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, he pushed me. I could have broken my arm or whatever." So,
Yeah.
well, I wanted to talk about your dad because, of course, he's the inspiration for this. He was such a character. Like, he took so many chances. I mean, selling, the marijuana and like ended up going to prison because of that. But he still, even after that, it seemed like he still kind of liked to just whatever, inspired him. He wasn't afraid to take a chance, which, I mean, I think it's of that time and of his generation, but also I feel like boomers and silent gen, some people in that generation weren't willing to take chances.
He was straight up to me just an entrepreneurial business guy. I mean, he was into making money, and he wasn't, like you said, he wasn't afraid to take risks. There's no way I could see my dad, my profession has been like IT sales. I've been in technology sales my whole career. I couldn't imagine him he would not be a fit for it. I mean, he liked the thrill of what he was doing. And I think, both his he had kind of two career paths. Like you said, when he was younger and he was selling marijuana. I mean, that was kind of his first phase, and then he came out, and not only that, but like I mentioned in the book, I mean, he could have done that these days, and it could have been totally
Right.
legal. He just, to me, it was like he was ahead of the curve. He saw an opportunity. He would never do anything to hurt anybody. He looked at it as a harmless thing, and he saw it as a way to make money. My dad liked to have fun. He liked to party and have a good time and have everybody else have a good time. And so it was like a great fit for him, and he was really successful with it. And so look, like if you fast forward, he could have done that today. And so, but he couldn't do it back then. So he served his punishment, his time for that. And he came out, and the vending machine business was another great fit for him. He loved renovating those bars or being a part of something that drew a crowd into the bars. He loved going into bars that weren't performing and seeing his potential and helping them create a bar that attracted people that wanted to create business. And so again, he liked being around that environment. It was like the perfect job for him. He wanted me to come back and work with him or take it over at some point. Again, I was like, I just don't know if I could see myself doing this, Dad. But both beginning and the ending of his career, I mean, he was in stuff that he loved to do, and he was really good at it. When he passed away, and I did try to take it over for a little bit just to keep it afloat. It was just so obvious. Like the reason he had the business he had is because of his relationship that he built with the bar owners, and they just loved him. And so when he was gone, it was like the business was just gone. I just
Yeah.
went,
Yeah, and you got the sense from you talking about him that he was like very personable. And yes, the business what businesses were success because of him. That
yeah,
people, because it's when you were talking about in the book what happened after you passed away with the business, I was like, in that company that took you to court.
yeah.
I'm like, what a bunch of jerks. I mean, like, you
Terrible.
know,
It's not a great industry. It's not a
yeah,
real, it's a cutthroat industry. It's a terrible, I mean, it's a rough industry. And yeah, there's no contracts, no agreements. I mean, it's probably evolved and changed so much, but back then there was just nothing. I used to get so, when I would talk to my dad about it, I was always so nervous about it because I was like, Dad, there's just nothing protecting you from any of this stuff. My dad was so generous with his money that he would loan people money all the time. There'd never be any contracts. There would never be anything. He'd be like, he'd just shake a hand, someone in the shake a hand. That was the agreement.
right.
When he passed away, there was so much money out there that he had loaned out that everybody just was like, that there was like no way to get any of it back. But the flip side is that I think he really enjoyed being able to do that. He enjoyed being able to be in a position to loan people money or give people money. Like in the early days when he was selling marijuana and he was making a lot of money. I mean, he was the first one to help people buy houses or whatever they wanted to do. He enjoyed to be in a position where he could do that for other people. He liked to help people. He was just a good-hearted guy.
I just found him so fascinating because some of the things that he did reminded me of my dad. My dad was definitely more straight laced, and he's an orthodontist, and we a little
Yeah,
paranoid about things. And our house was like Fort Knox, granted because we had a judge murdered down the street from us, and then our house became like lockdown. But the thing with the cars, like the obsession with the car, like has to be perfect. And my dad was like that. He was,
yeah,
can't mess the car up, and you got to be careful this and do that. And so it was like a few things where I'm like, you can see the commonalities in different generations. You're like, yeah, my parents were like that, or yes, Gen X, like we're like this. And granted, not everybody's the same, but it was just so interesting how he loved cars.
yeah. He was I mean, fashion, style, cars, music. I mean, it was just that was right up his alley. And I mean, like that Eldorado was the worst part about going through that house after the crime to see that car completely destroyed and burned up in the fire because it just was his pride and joy. And it was like a 1995, I think. I think it was a 95. No, no, it would have been earlier than that. Maybe like 92, 93, but it had no miles on it. He never drove it. He always had these work vans that he would use for his job and just drive around in those, and they weren't nice. They were just beat up vans, but that car, it didn't have any miles on it at all. So it was heartbreaking to see that car.
Yeah.
And I have photos. That's kind of one of the photos I took when I went through the house. I have the photo. You could see that car, and it's surreal to see the roof burned off the house. The car looked like it was almost like melted into the ground because the heat was so intense that the rims kind of melted into the garage floor. Just it was brutal.
I mean, I can't imagine, getting that phone call in the beginning where it's like your dad's missing and then you find out that he's been murdered and and he died such a horrible way and that's just so nobody wants to get that phone call and just having, you're not in the same place as him. You have to get on a plane. So then you're sitting on the plane just thinking about you don't know what you're going to encounter when you get there. And then you have to deal with the court cases and the police. And then, of course, the estate stuff, which is a whole other pain in the ass. How did you, I mean, I know you talk about it in the book, but how did you get through that time in the beginning. And since then, because it's not like there's somebody in jail, but and you can tell from, your book too, that not everybody that should be held accountable is held accountable. So how did you deal with that when it happened and then, subsequently the years after that?
Yeah, I think I mentioned in the book, but it really did come down to the love that I had for my wife, my newborn son, having that immediate family close to me and a part of my life is what got me through that. If I would have just been a single guy by myself and that would have happened and I was just living in an apartment by myself, I don't know if I would have handled it as well. I would have probably, I don't know, and there were certain things about it. There was, the relationship I did have with my dad. I took a lot of comfort in that he passed away unexpectedly, but he knew how much I loved him and vice versa. I had that as well. It wasn't like I had this, bad relationship with my dad and then he passed away and I had all these regrets. I wish I would have said this or I wish I would have done that. I didn't have any of that. So that helped out a lot too. But it was my immediate family. That dream that I mentioned in the book where I got to kind of talk with him a little bit after the crime in my dream. I really do feel like that dream, that was his way of kind of coming to me and saying, I'm fine, I'm in a better spot. Don't go down a dark path with this thing because nothing's going to change. It happened, it's over with. Move on with your life. You got a beautiful family. You're doing really well with work. Just focus on that. Don't go down this dark path because I could have easily just been obsessed with the crime and but it wouldn't have changed it. You can't, that's not going to change anything. So I'm happy that I didn't go into this real dark place and focus on that for a really long time. So I had good things going on in my life that allowed me to move on from it. And I just wanted to, I kind of felt like he was watching over me and he was watching me live my life. And so I didn't want to disappoint him.
Yeah. Yeah, I know you mentioned Rocket Man by Elton John when you hear that playing and the conversations, the last conversations you had with him, it wasn't, because sometimes you read books, you're like, "Oh, no, this person," you had an argument or you didn't get to talk to him. But yeah, you
Yeah.
got to tell him. He knew how you felt, and
Yeah.
I mean, that's important for anyone. It's funny when you were talking about, waiting for a sign from him or when you hear the song, like I've had the same kind of things with my parents, being gone. Like sometimes I'll hear my dad loved Neil Diamond and every once in a while that would come on, or like after my mom passed away, I would like smell her perfume like in the house. And then we were moving my dad and my sister and I were two different rooms and I'm like, it smells like mom's perfume. And then she ran in the closet and then went to the other room. She's like, oh no, now she's in here. So like I feel like, I mean, some people don't believe in that and that's fine for them. But
I believe in it. I do
I
believe
do
in it.
too.
I do. I don't know if it maybe just helps, but I do believe in it. Like I don't know if you can see it in this cabinet back here, but that's the black marble urn that his ashes are in. I wrote about it in the book, but I don't know if you can see it. So his
Yes.
ashes are here in the house with me, and I know I mentioned it in the book, but I, as a way to pay tribute to my dad over the years after the book had ended, is that I've probably had 7 or 8 ski trips where I've put his ashes at ski resorts and really cool places with good views up in the mountains, and now it's something my son and I do together. So that's kind of, but I still have some of them. I have like 3 or 4 resorts that I still want to go to and spread them. But one of the things you mentioned that made me think about this is that it was just either this year or last year on the night of his crime, the night the crime happened with him. We associate that crime, he probably passed away around 11 o'clock at night on February 27th and in 2008. And so I think it must have been, I think it was maybe, I don't know, maybe last year or even this year. But everybody in the house was asleep and in bed here. And at 11 o'clock on the 27th, our TV in the living room just turned on all of a sudden. It just kind of freaked me out a little bit. Like I don't know, something happened there, but it's just weird that it happened right at that exact moment.
Yeah, I
Um,
fully believe they send us, messages because I mean, I've had weird experiences, not just with my parents, but I remember being in high school and my mom's dad passed away. And I remember being on the bus in the morning and I just had this really weird feeling that came over me and I didn't know what it was. And then later that day, it was like homecoming. My sister and I were standing on the field because we were majorettes. And they're like, you have to leave. Your grandfather died. And I was like, okay. And then later I told my dad, and he's like, that's so funny because my dad's mother called and it's like, something happened. I know something happened. So I feel like, people send us signs, sometimes good, sometimes not, but it is comforting when you've lost someone, when a song you hear or, the TV coming on, even though it's freaky, that they're letting
yeah,
you know that they're still
that's
there.
kind of a great story. But the song, yeah, that was it. that was a big part of it. It seemed like it would come on in the most random times, and yeah, obviously the book is named after that nickname that he had as a kid, Rocket Man, and just that song would come on all the time, and it was a really bizarre couple of years. I mean, as you read in the book, like just so many twists and turns, like with the case. Like not only did that I lose my father to this crime, but for 9 months, we thought we were on this path that were the people that were responsible were in custody, and then they were going to get tried. They were going to go to court. We were finally going to be able to put this to bed and move on. And my whole family was on edge for the whole 9 months because we weren't getting a lot of details. And all we could go by is they got the right people. They're going to go to court. We're going to finalize this and we're going to be able to move on. And then literally right before that was going to happen, the DNA comes back and it's somebody completely different than who they thought. And then they let all the original teenagers go. They pull this new guy in, and it almost like it just reset everything. Like everything that we were hoping to see some closure to, it just was ripped back open and we started all over again. So those couple of years were just a roller coaster of emotions.
I can only imagine. I mean, you hear stories all the time, about our justice system, and it I mean, it is kind of broken, and but at the same time, it seems like very hard to, even with all the technology they have to get the right person, put them, away, because sometimes there can be one little mistake or whatever, and having to sit there too in that courtroom couldn't have been easy either.
So I can't remember if I wrote. I think I did mention in the book. I mean, we heard afterwards that the suspect had tried to sneak a knife into the courtroom and he was going
Oh,
to
I
stab
remember that in the book. Yeah.
his lawyer. We heard about that. Like, I mean, that was crazy. I mean, the way that the part that was was awful is that it felt like to us that court case was everything. Obviously, my dad to me and to my family, he was such an important part of our family. He meant the world to us, and so getting some real closure on that was something we all had wanted. And it just felt like my dad didn't mean as much to the Detroit Police Department or whoever as us, obviously. So it just felt like we got somebody in custody. This seems to be a match. This is it. We're done. Let's move on. We got other things. We got other things to worry about. Other cases. There was a big thing going on with a high up executive at that time, and it just felt like they just were like, we got a guy. Let's move on. That's it.
Right.
And
Like, check.
yeah, check it off the box. We're done. We want to move on from this. So it kind of felt like that. Like it just was kind of rushed through and done.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything more I could have done. But again, it's like I just didn't really want to go down that. I got a lot of people that ask me too, like, would you ever go to to the to jail and talk to the guy that's convicted of this? And in the beginning, I thought maybe I did want to do that. And then it was one of my friends who was like, you never know. That's not a good guy. He's not gonna put you at peace. He might say a bunch of stuff you probably didn't want to hear. And so you're gonna have to
Yeah.
weigh that out. Is that something you really want to take on? Like I don't think I wrote this in the book, but after the crime, I went over to the police station or the fire station that was right there next to my dad's house and went and introduced myself and got into the police chief's office and sat down, or the fire chief's office, and sat down with him. And I really wanted to know, like, how they found my dad. And so they told me. He told me, he's like, "Are you sure you want to know all these details?" And I was like, "Yeah, I really want to know." And then after he told me and I walked out of there, I was like, I don't know if I really wanted to know that. I don't want those images in my head, like,
Yeah.
so it's a balance. Like, do you really want to go get to the bottom of it and get the details? Because those guys aren't, they're not interested. They're not good guys. So, the
Yeah.
criminals.
Yeah. Hence why they should be away,
Yeah,
hopefully.
he was convicted of a similar crime prior to this too, so I don't know. Yeah, yeah, it's unbelievable.
It definitely, I mean, it's stories you see, like documentaries and things, and it's just like um it's just shocking to see the way our system works, and then to see how it affects the people who are, that's their family member, and you don't always feel like some of the police do care, but sometimes they're just like, this is my job. And I get it. Like, you probably have to have some detachment, or you will just get obsessed with that one case and not
Yeah,
move on to the other people who want you to get closure. So let's move away from the tragedy, because I'm
say that.
sure.
Yeah, let's move on to something a little more positive.
So I wanted to ask you, since like your parents divorced and you left Detroit and moved to Atlanta, um, and had a very interesting life. Like your stepdad,
Yeah,
very interesting. I actually Googled it, so I was like,
yeah,
a very interesting person, as well. Divorce was definitely more prominent when we were growing up. But to live in two separate places and kind of have like two separate lives. I mean, you were so young, but like, do you think that had any, impact later on you? Or are you just like, this is my life and I get to live here and then I get to go here?
You know, it did have a huge impact. And, my stepdad, Peter, he played an equally, you know, big piece in my upbringing as well. Like I mentioned, my real dad and I were close. We're almost like buddies. We were friends. I love him. I loved him more than anything. I mean, he was like one of my best friends. He was just a close friend. But when I originally moved to go want to live with my dad when he came out of prison, I just, in my mind as a little kid, I just felt like I wanted to be there for him and be a positive impact on his life when he came out and just be there for him. And so that was the driver behind wanting to go move and live in with him. And at the time, I wasn't quite ready for my mom's new relationship with my stepdad. And I just wanted to be close to my dad. I wasn't ready for another father figure to come into my life, I think, at that age. And so I wanted to go live with my dad. 3 years after that, um, it felt to me like it felt like my dad was settled. Like I did kind of what I set out to do. I wanted to be there for him when he got out and got situated, and that had happened. And he was so busy with his work anyway. I was like, all right. And I really liked Atlanta. I liked living in Atlanta when I was a kid a lot. I think I
Mhm.
probably felt like I fit in better in Atlanta than I did in Detroit. So I wanted to move back to Atlanta. And so, that the transition between those two houses was crazy. I mean, went from like 1,000 square foot house to like a 9,000 square foot house, and my stepdad was super successful and in his own way, and so moved into this huge house with him, and he taught me a lot of great things. I mean, my whole journey to go out to college in Colorado was because of my stepdad. He's the one that got me kind of focused on, like think big, like take a chance, get out of your comfort zone, try something new. Don't just go to University of Georgia because you are graduating down here and then all your friends are going to go there. And he's like, you do the same thing. Like, try something totally different at this age in your life. And he got me thinking like that. And the fact that he did that, and I did move halfway across the country to go to college, it opened me up to, like, after I got over that, homesick period. After that, I felt like I could move and do anything or go anywhere. So I owe him a lot. I owe him a lot for that because I don't know where I would have ended up. Or I don't know if I would be the same person if I would have just, maybe if I would have spent my whole life in the same spot, maybe I wouldn't have had so much adventure and experience and that came of it. So they were both great. They got along really well, which was cool. There was no animosity or anything like that. They got along really well. My dad could get along with anybody, and Peter was very easygoing, and so it was cool to see them get along. And um, it was it was a great way to grow up. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Yeah, and it also seemed like when you were in college and you didn't do so great, which happens to a lot of people, that
Yeah,
your stepfather was like, "You better get your act together," and that talk that some of some of us need when we're
yeah.
growing up, because the adjustment from being a kid or teenager living with your family and then going somewhere different and going to college, it's a hard adjustment. It's not that easy.
I was enjoying my newfound freedom being in college, and I wanted to have fun, and my grades suffered because of it. And I pulled it together the last 3 years and turned it around. But that first year was just I was just having a good time, and I definitely don't want my son to go down that same path his first year. So yeah, it was one of those things. Just kind of had too much fun that first year.
I mean, and you're in Colorado where there's so many, you can go skiing, you can go hiking. It's a really, I love Colorado. I think it's such a beautiful place. Okay,
Yeah,
I have one question. This might be weird, so if you don't want to answer, it's fine. But I noticed that your dad really liked younger women, and then your mom seemed to like older men. Did you ever think about that, or did that have any impact? I mean, I know your wife is, you went to college with her, but did you ever, were you bothered by that? Did you find that strange, or that was just your norm?
yeah. No, I never really thought about it as being strange. My dad did like younger women for sure. My mom just she liked she liked to be taken care of. She was attracted to, security and Peter who could take good care of her and show her a great life. And so she was attracted to that. So no, I didn't see anything, that is who they were, Yeah, my dad never remarried, obviously. I think he just, yeah, I don't know. His girlfriends were always probably at least 10 years younger than him.
Yeah.
He was, I think, late 20s or early 30s when my mom was like 19 when they got together.
Yeah, when I read that, I was like, "Wow." I mean, but I mean, also, I feel like that was totally fine when we were, younger, and that happened a lot. And I don't,
Yeah.
think it's that big deal. It was just funny. I like noticed that. I'm like, interesting. The pattern continues.
Yeah, 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 no, that is the pattern, and that is how they were, and no, I never saw it as anything weird. I mean, Peter, even though he was older, he was very young at heart. He had a very young spirit to him. He was a lot of fun. So, he was funny, he had a very young way about him, so it was kinda had the best of, kinda both worlds.
Did he have more than just his son? Did he have other kids? So did you
Yeah.
like kind of, experience not just being the only child, or were they a lot older than you? Or
Yeah, they were quite a bit older than me. So he had 2 boys and a daughter, right? So Peter Jr., um, who I was obviously close with from the book. Then he had another son, David, and then his daughter, Dana. They were quite a bit older than me. I do remember there was a point with, like, David where I was like, "You're gonna be my big brother," like, all those things. He was like, "Take it easy." It was,
right.
strange. So they were a little older than me, but I got close to them, and each of them in their own ways, but I was never really like having like a I mean, Peter Jr. would definitely be the closest that I would have had to like a sibling or a brother. Um, Dan and I got very close at one point when I was younger. We took this family trip that was really fun. Like 1992, my mom had rented out. It was like the ex-president's house in Acapulco, Mexico, and we had this house on the cliff in Mexico with like a full wait staff, and the rooms were like carved in the sides of rocks, and it was beautiful. And we spent like 2 weeks there, so it was really fun.
That's definitely something that, not everyone gets to experience, and, that becomes a
Yeah,
memory that you So speaking of Peter Jr., you got to work with him. He's a documentary filmmaker, which is really cool. And I know that you wanted to go into film, and then it didn't work out because, I mean, that's such a hard business to get into. But it seemed like it was still like a learning experience, but very cool to kind of be on set and to be part of a documentary and kind of see how that whole thing works.
yeah. Coming out of college, I had just big naive dreams about wanting to do it. I just felt like I was going to move out there. I'm just going to get involved, and I was so confident in my like creative side that I just felt like I was going to find a spot, and that was going to be it for me, and it was going to just take off from there. And it's just like you get out there and you realize it just doesn't work like that. You got to put a lot of time into it. It's like there's a million other people thinking the same way. Hollywood, it wasn't as glamorous as I had thought it was. So I was just young. I was, 21 years old, I think, when I did that. And so I just felt like I had a creative side with it. I mean, like with this book, I mean, I was able to revisit that side of me that I kind of put aside, I feel like, for many years working in the corporate world, corporate tech, and so the book was like me revisiting that side of me that I had, and now I felt like I had some real content that I could actually write something. Because when the book first started off, I wrote it as a script, a treatment for a movie is how I originally wrote. But it's like I didn't really know how to write it like that, and so I just changed it to write it as a book and kept it as a book from then on out.
And I know you mentioned in our last conversation that you like would love for it to be a movie. I think it'd be a cool like mini series or limited series,
Yeah,
especially how you do the non-linear
yeah.
treatment that you kind of go back and forth. And I mean, I always like that because it's
You
takes your
know,
head here and then there.
to me, in my mind still, I feel like if the right people got a hold of it and they even saw the way I saw it a little bit, it could be made into something really cool. And that's kind of what I hold on to. And maybe at some point that will happen. So, like recently, I sent it to some literary agents and I sent it to United Talent Agency through a connection that I had. And they read it and they were like, it's a beautiful memoir. It's like equally heartbreaking and heartwarming. It's a beautiful memoir, but I don't think we're the right fit because of the nonlinear structure. That's what they said. There's probably more to it than that, but
Mhm.
they said something like that's very hard to pull off, And when I thought about it, it would be hard to pull off, but to me, the way I think that you would do it is you would shoot it linearly, like normal time frame, and then you would just edit it out of order. But you would have to have multiple actors playing the different periods for the same character.
Right. Yeah. Especially you were a kid and then a teenager and then college and then,
It'd have to be
yeah.
like you'd have to have like 4, maybe 4 or 5 people playing the same one character, because it goes from it's 36 years worth of time, or 39 years worth of time. It
But it'd
covers
be so cool to see like the world that we grew up in, just like Stranger Things. I think part of the appeal of that show was because it was like our childhood without with we didn't have the scary monsters, but just to see like the 80s, recreated the skateboarding, the BMX, and then the music, and when rap came in, and then heavy metal, like just it'd be so. I mean, as a Gen Xer, like I love seeing our life come to life.
So did you? I got so excited when they put that movie out mid '90s a while ago.
Hmm.
So excited about that, and I was so disappointed in that movie. I don't maybe because I had such high hopes for it, but that just didn't hit the mark for me when it comes to like a '90s Gen X movie. I don't know if it did for you, but I watched
I
it and I just didn't really attach to it. Like like I felt like it just didn't do it for me, and that's
Yeah. Yeah, I because that's the one that Jonah Hill did, right? Is that yeah, I was like, "Did you actually remember the" yeah, it didn't feel like,
didn't feel right to me. I mean, I was thinking about
no.
though, he was probably like 8 years old, and like, when that time when that came out. So maybe that's just different age groups, but um, yeah, I don't know that. Like I said, if the right people got involved with it, I think it has a lot of potential. I think it covers a lot of different emotions. I think just recapturing those periods would be really cool. Um, there's just a lot to it, and I would be open if, like, if, people said, "Hey, we like this, but we don't like this. We want to change this or change that." I mean, I'd still be open to it.
Would you want to, like, say, sell the rights to it, or would you wanna, like, you write it, or you if or have some other screenplay, someone who's famous write the
Unless
screenplay for you?
somebody wanted to take it and completely modify it completely to a different thing. If that's not the case, and it was going to be kind of true or somewhat true to the book, then I would want to be involved with it. Like some of those chapters and some of the stuff that's in there, I have such a strong like vision of how I see that, or even some parts of it. So I would want them to at least show them what I'm thinking there, and then they decide whether they think it makes sense or not. But some of
Yeah.
the imagery that's some of my head, like I see it all the time.
Yeah. I mean, you lived it, and, and I think Gen Xers have we remember certain things in our childhood, exactly how it looked and what we were wearing and the music and everything. One of the things I loved about your dad too was it seemed like if you're like, I want to do skateboarding, I want to do BMX, I want like he just was like all in and wanted
Yeah,
to encourage whatever you wanted to pursue, which is
yeah,
amazing.
yeah. My real dad was always he always loved that kind of stuff. He always loved like when I started snowboarding, he loved it because he was like it's something new. He'd never seen it. He was always a skier, and so he saw something a totally different way to go down the mountain, and he was like, "This is really cool." My dad was always about whatever was cool. If it was cool and a bunch of people liked it, he was on board. He loved that stuff, right? And you got my stepdad Peter on the other side of that. Like when I was really into skateboarding, when he was like, "You got to move on from this thing. This you're going to go nowhere with this stuff. Like it's useless, right?" Like he was like, "Don't spend your time on this. It's not going to lead you anywhere." You should be reading the newspaper. You should start thinking about what kind of business, like when I was in high school, like he wanted me to read the USA Today like every weekend. And he was like, get away from skateboarding. It's a waste of time. And then down the road, when the X Games came out for skateboarding, he was like, he apologized to me and he was like, you could have maybe had something because I was a good skateboarder when I was a kid. And he was like, maybe that might have gone somewhere. And I didn't realize that it had any kind of potential to be something like that it became. And he
You
like
could have
almost
been the next Tony Hawk. I mean,
that was my idol. Tony Hawk was my idol. Yeah.
it's funny because talking about your stepdad Peter, like some of the things, like you need to read the newspaper. That reminds me of my dad because he'd be like, you got to get good grades. And when I got my first job, he's like, you got to be first in and last out. Meanwhile, my dad never worked in corporate; he was an orthodontist. Neither one of my parents experienced corporate life, and I'm like, what? And then they were, when I was moving different places because in advertising you have to do that, they did not understand. And I think a lot of our parents like, you got to read the newspaper, you got to know what's going on, which I think I appreciate because we didn't know what's going on, but,
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know,
I mean, there's no question Peter was extremely successful. For me now as a father, and now I have an 18-year-old son, and now, obviously I think about like how do I want to raise my kids and what do I want them to take away? And what I've kind of come to the conclusion of is that like it's not like a deadlock repeatable formula like your parents did this for you so you do this to your kids. Like people's changed so much over the years. Like my kids are totally different than me. I could never say to my son, "Hey, you go do something completely different and move out to Colorado and go be this person or do that." He's a totally different kid than I am. So, I just want to kind of meet him where he's at and be a good father to him for the person that he is and just try to give him good advice. But it's just so hard because everything changes so much. Generations
oh,
change. So It's just totally different. I'm glad that I'm not that kind of dad that's, like super hard on like, this is the way I did it and you're going to do it like this too. Like I'm glad that I'm not being like that with him.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because my dad grew up in even a smaller town than I did, and he had a brother, and they basically my uncle wanted to be a DJ, and my grandfather was like, "You can be a lawyer or a dentist." And my dad actually wanted to be a surgeon. So I will say, even though they were like, "You gotta do this, you gotta do this," he didn't want any of us to go into the dental field. He encouraged us to do whatever we wanted to. He didn't understand copywriting. My sister's an accountant, but she's not a tax accountant. My brother's a consultant. I still don't really know what he does. Like they didn't really understand it. And it's hard. I mean, I'm not a parent, but it's hard to, you see you want to support your kids, but also the reality of being an adult and that sometimes the things you want to do, like maybe be a screenwriter, that's a really hard path to go down. So
We
trying to
I
find that balance.
I try to tell I've been in technology sales my whole career, and I've had a lot of ups and downs. There's been big periods I've done really well. There's been periods where I haven't done so well. It's so all over the map. I've been telling my son, like, don't go down that path. Pick something that's like a solid choice. And like from what I hear and I think is great is the traits are what's coming back. Learning a trait, engineering, all the building and everything like that. Like so I'm trying to get him on that path of like electrical engineering. I feel like somewhere within that is like you'll always have a job. There is gonna continue to be all this explosion of AI and technology, data centers, all this stuff that if you understand and how to design electrical systems and put them together, you'll always have work for the foreseeable future. So that's kind of where we're at with trying to give him his own advice.
Yeah, you're like, take
You
it,
know?
leave it. Speaking of being in, tech, when I was reading the book and I was like, I feel the dot-com bubble bursting because being in advertising, I
Yeah,
mean, I started my career and that, I mean, I know it affected tech, but like, of course, when the economy gets messed up, they're like, advertising, let's cut. I mean, there was massive, massive layoffs all the
yeah,
time in my industry. But yeah, reading that, I was like, oh, I can feel it coming and I know something's going to happen.
yeah. That was a rough, like San Francisco, where that was living right there, right around the turn of 2000, 2001 and two, and yeah, it got ugly. Like you're so young. I was so young. I was so resilient to it. So it's like I didn't. I could pick up and move with like a pickup truck. I just had like a bed and a couch and a stereo, and that was it. I didn't have anything else, so it was pretty easy to move around.
Well, and also too, it feels, San Francisco, like it's totally changed since that
Yeah,
time because it's so expensive and you hear about people who live there forever being priced out and like big tech just seems to be wreaking havoc. And it's so interesting how just technology is great, but also comes in and messes everything up. And there's never like a plan, like what happens if this happens and this happens. I feel like we don't have plans. We just go with the flow and fix it later.
I mean, as you know, I lived in San Francisco, kind of two different waves, and it was such a beautiful city back then. And I don't know, I haven't been there in a while, but all I see is like the news and what I hear about it, and it just seems like it's gone downhill so bad. I feel like it's going to come back around, but back then in that period when I lived there, it was an awesome place to live. It was so much fun. I mean, it was a beautiful city. There's always stuff going on, the food, the restaurants, the culture, I mean, everything about it, the character, everything is so close together. I mean, it was a really cool place, and I'm glad I got to experience that when I was younger.
And that loft that you guys lived in that was
Yeah,
in the worst part of town, and
yeah,
I mean, that sounds like an experience when you would have only when you're, young. You're like, "Oh, we don't have to look at the place. I'm sure it's fine." That
yeah.
seems like it was, it could turn you off of San Francisco, but then you have the rest of the city. But was it, like, terrifying every night or
I was just more worried about my wife. I mean,
Yeah.
just it would have been just me, it would have been fine, but her, I mean, she packed up and moved from Denver to Orange County to move in with me, which was a beautiful beach town, it was gorgeous. And then I got this job offer up in the city in San Francisco, and she had always wanted to live in San Francisco, so we just moved up there. And when the dust settled and we were in that loft that you talked about, I was like, oh, I felt like I made like a really bad mistake. I felt like I got, enticed her to come move in with me and provide this great life with her. And then I moved her into this apartment that was awful. Right. And so I was really worried about it. But, you know, it just, the timing all worked out. It was right before our wedding. Our wedding, we came back from that. We were on cloud nine from that. And I was like, all right, now I'm just going to focus on getting us out of this place. And it worked out. literally the loft we moved into after that place was probably 3 or 4 blocks down the street, but it just that's how it is in the city. Like a 3 or 4 block difference can feel night and day, different from each other.
Yeah, it's so interesting how that happens in cities where it's like you can literally cross the street. It's like this is a scary place, but across the street. I remember I was in Philadelphia. I was like interviewing for jobs, and I something happened, and I forgot my computer charger, so I had to go to an Apple store. And I'm like driving. I'm like, oh, this is not good. This is not good. And then I literally went through a light. I'm like, okay, this is fine. It was.
Yeah,
And my mom had went to school at University of Pennsylvania, so I said to her, I'm like, was this always like that? She goes, yeah. You just turn the corner, bad neighborhood, walk a block, and I feel like a lot of cities are like that where, and it's so
yeah.
interesting how that, you know, the bad stuff stays in one area. It doesn't come into the hopefully.
San Francisco, when I would, like talking about bad areas or bad stuff, back then, it didn't feel like a very violent city at all. You never were really too worried about like violence. It just maybe homeless and it was gross or,
Right.
weird. You got some weird, drug addicts or something on the street, but it just wasn't a very violent. It didn't feel like that. You never were really like worried about your life or anything. It just, rough neighborhoods and drugs took a hold of it and poor people, homeless people, and that's the bad part of it. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was a beautiful city. What else? Anything else that jumped out
So
at
well, I was gonna so what does your wife and what does she think about you writing, because there are some parts like, and we had sex, and we like, what did she think about writing, your story, not just your story and your parents' story, but, your love story and, your early life. What did she think about
Yeah, yeah, no, she loved it. I mean, she read the very original version, which I feel like was pretty bad, and she liked it. She's like, it was great." And then right before it went to kind of final editing, I wanted her to read it again because I changed so much of it, and she gave me a lot of really good feedback at the end that I made the changes that I feel like improved it a lot. Like, you know, just young when I was really young, I don't know, there was stuff she's like, "There's a lot of this stuff that's very similar. You should maybe cut some of this stuff down." So I cut a lot of it down. The part you mentioned, like our love story, the having sex, that kind of stuff. I felt weird like writing it and not including that or keeping part of it because I wanted it to be authentic to how things were at that period, and I didn't want to like like there's no other I don't have nothing in there about another girlfriend or anything like that. So
I noticed that, I'm like,
I
yeah.
wanted to just I joke around with her about, it, and I was like, people are going to read this and think you married the 40-year-old virgin.
Well, I think it was, I think that was a nice part too, because it kind of felt like, you guys were meant to be. You met in college and then
Yeah.
you separated, and then, you always thought about her, and it was like you met your person and you would find each other again. And, I don't think you needed the other, girls in there.
I don't know how it contributed to the book at all. Like just, having, short-term relationships throughout high school and college leading up to that. I just don't know what that would have it wouldn't have added anything. So that's why I chose not to. And like you said, I mean, yeah, it was meant to be. And I thought it was a really cool story. And the fact that, like I said earlier, if I wouldn't have been encouraged to move across the country and go to school in Colorado for college, I would have never met her. Who knows what my life would have been like. So um, yeah, she's a huge part of it. We just celebrated our 22-year anniversary last couple weeks ago.
Nice.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Speaking so, like, you guys have been married for 20 years, and I know, like, a lot of people that come from divorced families kind of struggle sometimes either they don't wanna get married or they wanna be like their parents, or sometimes they repeat their parents. When you were, going into getting married, did you think about any of the way you grew up and the way your parents,
So
separated, or did you just like, "I this is my life and I'm gonna do what makes me happy?"
So leading up to my relationship with my wife, when we got back together after college, like leading up to that, I struggled to really have, I felt like long-term relationships with people. I don't know. It was just, I struggled with it. And I always wondered if I was, meant, I was cut out to be married or there was something that there was supposed to, if that was really me. And if that's, but getting back together with Jennifer after college and it was like like I just knew instantly that she was my wife and who I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. It was like there was no doubt. I've never been so sure about anything in my life when it came to that. And so everything just felt absolutely right about it. I felt and during that period too, like I felt like when we were that age or younger, there was people who maybe were just getting married because they felt like they were that age and it's time to get married. And so you just go get married, and I didn't have that. I literally felt deep down, just deep down inside that like this is the person I was supposed to be with and everything was meant to be. And it just felt so perfect. So I didn't have any reservations about marriage with her or anything like that. To me, it was like we couldn't get married fast enough. Like we got married like 6 months after we got back together after college. I mean, we felt like we just wanted to be together and wanted to get going with it. I mean, I didn't do a bachelor party or any of that kind of stuff. I don't want any of that. I just want to get married and let's
Right.
move on from this.
Well, when it's the right person, then,
Yeah.
you just go for it because why not? That's another thing. Speaking of relationships, I noticed too in the book that because you could have had like this person, that person, like the relationship you talked about, like you really got a good sense of, you know, with your friends, with, your roommates, or you got a sense of who you were and how you were with your friends and what kind of friends that you had throughout your life. And I think that that's hard to do too when you're talking about, other people in your relationships and in a memoir, because, you are talking about other people and you're like, oh, they might read this. But it was just a nice commonality throughout the book that it gave the readers a good sense of like who you were and what kind of relationships that you had. And also, went back to your dad and your stepdad and your mom, like they really instilled this in you the way you are, and you can kind of see that throughout the book. So I love that part of it too.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. Yeah, I mean, those people that are in the book that you mentioned, some of my closest friends. I mean, they're pretty much still in my life. All those people that were in there. I feel like when I was younger, I really wanted a big group of friends, and I was friendly with everybody and wanted to be friends with everybody. And I don't know. I think most people, when you get older, you start narrowing down your group, and I'm not so quick to just be in this big group of people anymore. It's like if it's not my old friends are still my friends to this day.
It is true as you get older, you're like, I don't need a bunch of people. I want the core people. Also, it's too exhausting. Like it's just you're
Yeah,
like,
it's too hard.
how many people can I have in my yeah, it becomes hard and everyone has their own lives.
We moved to Tennessee 4.5 years ago, and it was such a different change and a lot of things I didn't expect. And to meet new people has been kind of hard at my age. And I'm kind of at a point. It's like if I don't feel like a connection there, it's like I'm not gonna try super hard.
Yep. Yeah. I'm actually one of the topics I'm covering this year on the podcast is like why it's so hard to make friends as an adult, and maybe hopefully getting people on to give us some tips because it's exhausting. And then when you think you meet someone, you're like, okay, and then they just disappear, or like you're always putting in the effort. You're like, I'm too tired for this. I'll just stay home on my couch. It's fine.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, we're pretty much homebodies. I mean, we're always home together. We're a pretty tight unit as a family. So it was nice to move from California to Tennessee and have a little more space with the house. Our house in California that Canoe Pond house is pretty tiny.
Yeah. Good old California. It's a huge state, but I feel like everywhere is just so expensive.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's beautiful. I don't have anything bad to say about it. I love it. I think it's a beautiful state. I think it's a great place. Both my kids are born there, obviously.
I love that you can like be on the beach in the morning or whatever, and then drive a few hours and you can be in the mountains. And there's not a lot of states like that. I think California might be the only one.
Yeah, it's got everything. It really is. It's a really beautiful place. And I think you could read in the book, like I was drawn to it from a very young age. All those heroes that I had, like you mentioned Tony Hawk and all the bike guys and the music that I liked. I just felt like I was just like drawn to it. So
And you spent time with your dad there too. So I feel like that. Yeah.
and then
Because did you ever find the place that you lived?
I did,
Yeah.
yeah, I did it many years later. It's weird. I was at a stoplight. I looked for that place for probably a couple years after we moved there, and I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't find it, and I was at a stoplight one day, and I was like, "Oh my god, I think this neighborhood might be the place." And then I like drove in the entrance and went to where I thought it would be, and I was like, "This is it." I found it. It took me a couple years to find it.
Nice. Awesome.
I couldn't believe it. Yeah, it was really crazy.
Well, we went on longer than I thought, which is fine because there was a lot to talk about with the book, and I wanted to give the audience a chance to hear more about it. Are you planning on writing any more books, or is this like one and done? Or
Yeah, I think it's a one and done. I don't have any plans to write anything more. I mean, that's just it's something I wanted to write, and I put everything I had into it, and I put a lot of effort, a lot of time. I don't see me really writing anymore. I feel like that's like the best of. That's the best I got. I don't think I have anything better than that.
well, also this is besides your kids, like this is your legacy, and you've left. You told your dad's story, you told your story, your mom, and your stepdad and your friends, like this, and your love story. Like it's not many people. Maybe some like your great grandkids one day could be like, oh look, you can read this book and get to know you, and I think that's really cool.
My son read it, and my son last year in school he read it, And I thought that was really cool that, he got to see kind of the background. And we just, one more story for them to wrap it. Like 2 weeks ago, we decided last minute to take this ski trip to Snowshoe in West Virginia. And skiing with my dad was always my favorite thing. And now it's become the favorite thing with my son. And when we took this trip up to West Virginia, the timing of it all lined up perfectly where my favorite photo that I have with my dad is this photo of me and him at the top of Aspen Mountain. When I drove, a freshman in college, I drove from my dorm room at Colorado State out to Aspen. My dad flew from Detroit to Aspen, and we spent a week skiing together. And we had this photo up at the top of the mountain, just the two of us holding our skis. You can see the blue skies in the background. It's my favorite photo I have with my dad. And so I was 18 in the photo, and it was right before my dad's 50th birthday. This past trip I just took with my son, we hired a photographer. We recreated that photo wearing the same
Aw.
clothing. And my son is 18, and I'm right before my 50th birthday. So the ages are exactly the same. So we recreated a photo. He understood I was like, Jake, thanks for doing this for me. I know it's not
Right.
something. And he was like, I get it. He's like, I get it. It's a big deal. I understand. I understand how important that photo is to you. And he was like, he loved the fact that he could recreate this with me. And so
I love that. That's
it
great.
all lined up. And I think the book is just like the book to me is crazy how it's a true full cycle of life. I was born when my dad was 31. My son was born when I was 31, and the book kind of captures everything in between there. So it's a true cycle of life between a father and a son.
Yes, yes. And I think that's the perfect way to end it. If you have not read the book yet, go to Amazon, pick it up. There's lots to explore and unearth and enjoy. And if you want to take a walk down memory lane, it's there. And also just to explore, a son paying tribute to his dad, who unfortunately lost in a tragic way. So thank you so much for writing this. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being the second book in our book clubs.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I appreciate your time. I love the discussion. I really appreciate all the questions, the interest, the fact that you just took the time to read the book. So thank you so much. And I really appreciate it. It means the world to me.
Thank you so much to Brett for joining the podcast again to talk about his book, Rocket Man. Thank you for being our winter book club pick. You can find all of his information in the show notes, especially a link to pick up the book available on Amazon if you haven't read it. I highly recommend it if you want to take a little trip down memory lane and also read about, a father and son relationship that was just so lovely. This is such a nice homage to Brett's dad. Go pick it up, support a fellow Gen Xer, and we will be picking a spring book coming up soon. If you have any suggestions, please let me know, and stay tuned for content coming in April, where we will be talking about the Gen X CEO. Are we CEOs? Are we not CEOs? Are we struggling? Are we not? We'll have conversations. Until next time, my fellow Gen Xers, don't you forget about me, because I won't forget about you. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the Gen X Experience. If today's episode resonated with you, please consider sharing it on social media or with a friend. We'll see you back here next time.